She thought it was just a plastic tote tossed on the roadside. But it wasn't. It sat right at the edge of the woods, covered in wet leaves, like it had been placed there moments ago. A crumpled note was taped to the lid, "Abandoned for 24 hours." When she lifted it, she found a tiny albino bobcat kitten, shivering, wheezing, a red mark tight around its neck. And the moment she gathered him into her arms, leaves rustled behind her. Like someone was still watching. Before we start, hit the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't. And hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Lauren Hayes had just finished a night shift that felt like it had lasted a week. The kind of shift where the hospital hallways never get quiet, where fluorescent lights hum like angry bees, and where the smell of antiseptic clings to your hair no matter how many times you wash it. Her hands still carried that faint, chalky scent of latex gloves. Her shoulders ached the way they do when you've lifted too many bodies and tried too hard not to let your voice shake. Dawn was only starting to think about showing up. The sky over upstate New York was a cold, washed-out gray, the sort of color that makes everything look older than it is. A thin fog lay low over the fields, and the bare trees stood like dark stitches against the morning. Lauren turned off the main road and eased onto a narrow dirt lane that cut along the edge of the woods. It was a shortcut home, the kind locals take when they're too tired to sit at another stoplight. Her tires made a soft crunch on frozen gravel. The heater in her car sighed warm air that smelled faintly of dust. She was already picturing a hot shower, clean sheets, and the quiet relief of closing her eyes. Then she saw it. At first, it looked like roadside trash, something somebody tossed out without a thought. A plastic storage tote, the kind you'd keep holiday decorations in, sat half-hidden in wet leaves right where the trees began. The lid was slightly warped. One corner was cracked. The tote was an ugly, tired shade of blue-gray, and it didn't belong. There, not at that careful line between the road and the woods. Lauren slowed, frowning, and the hair on her arms lifted in that small, unexplainable way it does when your body knows something before your mind does. She pulled onto the shoulder and put the car in park. The engine ticked softly, cooling down. In the silence, she could hear a few crows arguing somewhere deeper in the trees. A faint breeze pushed through the branches with a dry, papery whisper. She got out. Cold air slapped her cheeks and filled her nose with the sharp smell of damp earth and old leaves. Her boots sank slightly into the muddy edge of the lane. As she walked closer, she noticed the leaves on top of the tote weren't settled like they'd been there for days. They looked freshly disturbed, still glossy with dew. And there was tape across the lid, cheap, clear packing tape, stretched tight as if someone had rushed. A piece of paper was stuck under it, wrinkled and stained around the edges, Lauren's. Heartbeat thumped once, hard, like a warning knock. She crouched and her knees protested. The paper shook a little under her fingers as she peeled back a corner of tape. The handwriting was messy, hurried, the ink dark in some places and faded in others like it had gotten wet. Abandoned for 24 hours. Lauren's mouth went dry. She read it again, slower, as if that might change what it said. Her breath fogged in front of her face. The words sat there like ice. She slid her fingertips along the lid. The plastic was cold enough to bite. She hesitated, listening. At first, nothing, just the wind, the crows, the far-off hush of a passing truck on the main road. Then, from inside the tote, came a sound so small it almost wasn't a sound at all. A thin, raspy little breath, like someone trying to whistle through a cracked straw. Lauren's stomach tightened. She lifted the lid just a fraction, careful, the way you open a door in the middle of the night when you're not sure what's on the other side. A white shape lay inside, curled and still. Not bright white like fresh snow under sunlight. More like the pale underside of a leaf or milk spilled on a dark floor. The tiny body trembled, and the tote smelled like cold plastic and wet fur and something sour, fear maybe, or sickness. When the kitten shifted, Lauren caught a glimpse of eyes that looked too light, almost watery, struggling to focus in the dim. An albino bobcat kitten. Even exhausted, even half frozen in place, it wasn't a house cat. Its ears had little tufts, small as paintbrush tips. Its paws were too big for its body, splayed weakly against the bottom of the tote. And around its neck, faint but unmistakable, was a red mark, an angry ring where something tight had been. Lauren's chest felt suddenly crowded. She thought of all the things she'd seen on night shifts, wrecks, strokes, lonely goodbyes. But this was different. This was quiet cruelty in a plastic box. She slipped her hands under, the kitten as gently as if it were made of glass. The fur was damp and cold, and the little body weighed almost nothing. When it breathed, it made a soft, clicking wheeze. The kitten didn't fight. It didn't have the strength. It only clung, the tiniest flecks of claws against her sleeve, like it was asking a question without words. "Hey," Lauren whispered, her voice rough from fatigue. "Hey there. I've got you." She glanced back toward the woods. The trees stood close together, dark and watchful. The fog made the space between trunks look deeper than it should. She suddenly had the unsettling feeling that she wasn't alone, that someone could be standing just beyond that first line of brush, silent, waiting to see what she would do. Her pulse sped up. She tucked the kitten against her coat, letting her body heat do what it could, and grabbed the paper again with trembling fingers. Under the bold line about 24 hours, more words stared up at her. "Please!" 24 hours is all. I could buy him. Lauren swallowed hard. In her mind, she could already hear the practical questions. Should she call animal control, a wildlife rescue, a vet? She also heard another voice, the quieter one that had kept her in her job all these years, the voice that said, "Not later, not after coffee, now." She moved back toward her car, faster than she meant to, the kitten pressed against her chest. The cold air stung her eyes. The engine started with a low rumble that felt almost comforting. She cranked the heat, and warm air filled the cabin, carrying the dusty smell of the vents. The kitten made a faint sound, a tiny, broken cry that scratched at Lauren's heart. Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone. She searched for the nearest emergency vet and the local wildlife rescue number. On the screen, her bank app notification flashed from an earlier bill payment, and for a split second she thought of the practical side of survival. Medical bills, unexpected expenses, the kind of costs that come without warning. She had helped strangers navigate things like health insurance and personal loans in crisis moments more times than she could count. Now, staring at that fragile white body, she knew she'd spend whatever she had if it meant this kitten got one more chance. Outside, the fog thickened along the tree line. Lauren looked in the rearview mirror and saw the edge of the woods blur into gray. She couldn't shake the feeling that whoever left that tote hadn't gone far, that the story wasn't finished just because she'd found the beginning. She put the car in drive and headed toward the main road, her eyes flicking once to the side mirror, then again, just to be sure, because she could swear she heard something behind her, not the wind this time. A footstep in wet leaves. The farther Lauren drove from the woods, the more the heater seemed to dry the cold out of her bones, but it couldn't touch the tightness in her chest. The little albino bobcat kitten lay bundled in her coat on the passenger seat, a careful nest of fleece and fabric, its breathing thin enough that Lauren kept turning her head just to make sure the rise and fall was still there. Every few seconds, the kitten made a faint, gritty sound, like a tiny cough trapped behind a closed door. At the first red light, Lauren smoothed the wrinkled paper she'd peeled from the tote. The words were still there, blunt as a bruise. Abandoned for 24 hours. Beneath that, in smaller, shakier letters, please. 24 hours is all I could buy him. Don't call the police. He's not safe with me. Her jaw clenched. Anger flashed hot, quick, then faded into something heavier. Because there was panic in the ink, too. Panic and a strange kind of pleading that didn't fit the neat shape of a villain. She pictured someone standing in the same fog she'd seen, hands shaking, trying to do one last decent thing the wrong way. The light turned green. Lauren drove with one hand and dialed. With the other, her phone pressed between shoulder and ear the way she'd done 100 times on shift. The nearest vet clinic's line rang, then went to a recorded message. Closed until 8. She called the county animal control office. Another message. Business hours only. When she finally reached a wildlife rescue hotline, a tired voice explained they were overwhelmed and could only take intake appointments around midday. Lauren stared through the windshield at the pale morning and felt the same frustration she'd felt in emergency rooms, how the world keeps its hours even when someone is slipping away. She swallowed it down and did what she always did. Make a plan with what you have. She pulled into a gas station to grab a bottle of water, a pack of hand warmers, and anything soft she could use to keep the kitten steady. The air inside the store smelled like burnt coffee and cinnamon gum. The lights were too bright, making her eyes ache. The cashier, a middle-aged man with silver hair and a gentle face, noticed the bundle in her arms when she came to the counter. "You okay, ma'am?" he asked, voice low, like he didn't want to spook whatever she was holding. "It's a wild kitten," Lauren said, and even that felt absurd coming out of her mouth. "I'm trying to get it help." He nodded once, slow, and rang her up without comment. Lauren's card machine beeped, loud and sharp, and for a second she thought about how quickly a crisis turns into numbers. Emergency vet care could run into thousands. The kind of amount that makes people think about health insurance, savings, even a personal loan when life hits hard and fast. She pushed the thought aside. Worrying about money wouldn't warm a body back from the edge. As she turned to leave, she caught sight of a man near the cooler aisle. He wasn't buying anything. He was just standing there, hands in his jacket pockets, watching her bundle like he was trying to decide what it was worth. His eyes flicked to her face and away, quick as a match flare. Lauren's skin prickled. She tightened her grip and walked out into the cold. Back in the car, she set the hand warmers under the blanket, careful not to let them touch the kitten directly. The kitten's fur felt like damp velvet, and its ears twitched as warm air rolled over it. Lauren unfolded the note again, meaning to read it one more time, to pin down the logic of it. That's when she saw the back. There were smudges, faint and half-erased, like someone had written more, and then tried to rub it away in a hurry. Lauren angled it toward the light. A few words surfaced through the smear, broken but clear enough to sting. He came from a place he never should have been. Lauren's throat tightened. Outside, a car door slammed somewhere across the lot. She glanced up, and for a heartbeat she thought she saw the same man from inside the store standing beside a dark pickup, looking her way. Then he turned his head, and the fog of morning seemed to swallow him. Lauren's house usually felt like a soft landing. Warm lamplight, the faint smell of laundry soap, the quiet tick of the kitchen clock. That morning it felt different. The air inside was too still, like the rooms were holding their breath with her. She carried the bundle in both arms, careful and slow, as if one wrong step could shake something loose. She set the Albino Bobcat Kitten on the kitchen table atop a folded towel. Under the light, his fur looked almost translucent, the pale hairs catching a creamy glow, while his skin showed faint pink at the nose and around the eyes. His ribs rose and fell like tiny ridges under a thin blanket. Every breath made a faint rasping click that scraped at her nerves. When he tried to move, his legs wobbled, and his paws splayed out as if the floor were tilting beneath him. Lauren called the wildlife rescue again and left another message, her voice steady the way it had to be in emergencies, even when her stomach felt hollow. She found an old shoebox and lined it with fleece, then warmed a heating pad and set it on low, layering towels so the heat would be gentle, not burning. The warmth smelled faintly like sun-baked fabric, a comforting scent in a situation that wasn't comforting at all. Then she knocked on the neighbor's door. Derek Coleman opened it with a mug of coffee in one hand and a look that said he'd been awake longer than he wanted to admit. He was a broad-shouldered man in his late 60s with weathered hands and a quiet way of moving, like someone who'd spent years listening to the woods instead of talking over them. When Lauren told him what she'd found, he didn't gasp or bluster. He just followed her across the yard without a coat, as if the cold couldn't touch him. The moment Derek saw the kitten, his face changed, not fear exactly, more like recognition. "That's not a stray," he said softly, leaning closer. His breath fogged in the kitchen air, because he'd come in so cold. "That's a bobcat, and albino. Lord, that's rare." He didn't touch the kitten. He only pointed to the faint ring around his neck, the reddened skin like a bruise left by a tight cord. "Somebody kept him," Derek said, voice low. "And somebody's been in a hurry." Lauren felt heat rise behind her eyes. Why would anyone do that? Derek's gaze drifted toward the window, where the bare trees stood against a dull gray sky. "People want what's unusual," he said. "They think rare means it belongs to them." He paused, then added, "And rare also means someone might come looking." Those words landed in Lauren's stomach like a stone. She hadn't said a thing about the man at the gas station, but Derek seemed to sense it anyway. He walked through her house with the calm of someone assessing exits, light, noise. "Put him somewhere quiet," he told her. "No TV blaring, no bright lights. Keep the room warm and keep him dark. Albino's eyes can't handle glare." They moved the shoebox to the laundry room, where the sound of the dryer was a soft, steady hum, like a heartbeat. Lauren dimmed the light until the room was honey-colored and gentle. The kitten made a small sound, not a meow, not quite a cry, more like a thin, tired complaint. Lauren slipped her finger near his paw. He barely had the strength to curl his toes, but he did. A weak little hook that caught on her skin. It stung, just a pinprick, but it felt like an anchor. By evening, the temperature dropped. The windows turned black, reflecting Lauren's own worried face back at her. Derek returned with a tiny digital thermometer and a flashlight, and he showed her how to keep the warmth steady without overheating. "Slow and steady," he reminded her, "like you're keeping a candle from going out." The house settled into night sounds, the refrigerator cycling on, the distant whistle of wind through the eaves, the old floorboards creaking as Derek shifted his weight. Lauren sat on the laundry room floor, her back against the wall, watching the rise and fall of that small white chest. Her throat burned with exhaustion. She'd seen people fight for breath in hospital beds. She'd heard last words, but this helpless, silent struggle, made the world feel sharp around the edges. And then, close to midnight, the sound came. Not inside the house, outside. Tires on gravel. They rolled slow, deliberate, and then stopped. No slam of a car door, no voices, just an engine idling somewhere out in the dark. Lauren froze, her pulse pounding so loudly she wondered if Derek could hear it. Derek crossed the living room without turning on a light. He pulled back the curtain with 2 fingers and looked out. "There's a pickup at the end of your driveway," he murmured. "No headlights." Lauren's mouth went dry. Her palms turned slick. In her mind, she saw that man by the coolers, the way he'd watched her arms, like he was pricing what she held. She thought of the note. "Don't call the police. He's not safe with me." The kitten coughed, small and wet, and Lauren's whole body tightened with a new fear. Not just that someone might be out there, but that time, the one thing she couldn't bargain with, was already slipping away. She looked down at the shoebox, at that pale face barely visible in the dim, and she realized something with a cold, clear certainty. Whatever had been started at the edge of the woods hadn't ended there. The longer the pickup sat there, the more the silence in Lauren's house seemed to thicken. Even the old kitchen clock sounded too loud, each tick a hard little tap against her nerves. The laundry room light was dimmed down to a warm amber glow, but the rest of the house felt like a dark sea. Lauren could taste fear the way you taste metal, sharp, dry, sitting on the back of her tongue. Derek kept his voice low. "Lock the deadbolt," he said, not as a suggestion, but as a steady instruction. He moved like someone who'd learned to stay calm when the woods went quiet for the wrong reasons. Lauren's fingers fumbled with the lock, the cold brass slick under her palm. She pulled the chain too, even though she knew a chain didn't stop much. It just makes you feel like you've done something. In the laundry room, the kitten made a soft rattling sound, and Lauren's stomach dropped. She rushed back and knelt beside the shoebox. The little albino bobcat's eyes were half open, watery and unfocused, catching the dim light like pale glass. His breathing was faster now, shallower, as if he couldn't find enough air to fill his lungs. Every few breaths came with a tiny wheeze that sounded like paper tearing very slowly. Lauren pressed 2 fingers to his side, feeling the quick flutter of his heartbeat. Too fast, too light. She knew that rhythm. She'd heard it in patients when the body starts giving up because it can't keep itself. Warm can't keep itself fueled. Her own hands were warm, but they felt useless. Derek appeared behind her, crouching just enough to see. "He's crashing," he said quietly. "I can't wait until morning," Lauren whispered. Her throat tightened around the words. She thought of the Wildlife Rescue's voicemail, the closed vet line, all those systems that work fine until you need them at midnight. She thought of the note again, 24 hours, like someone had turned compassion into a deadline. Another sound came from outside, the faint crunch of tires shifting, gravel compressing. The pickup wasn't leaving. It was repositioning. Lauren's pulse pounded so hard she could feel it in her fingertips. "What if they come to the door?" she asked. "They don't want a scene," Derek murmured. "Not if they've done something illegal, but they might try to scare you." He exhaled slowly, then looked at Lauren with a calm that steadied her. "You need a real clinic, a 24-hour emergency vet." Lauren's mind snapped into action the way it always did when the fear got too big. She grabbed her keys, her phone, and the shoebox. The kitten's warmth was fading through the towels. She tucked a hand warmer under the top layer, careful again, always careful. Derek took the box from her, holding it like it mattered. "Do you have a credit card?" he asked, plain and practical. Lauren nodded, almost offended by the question, and grateful for it at the same time. She'd spent years telling families that help was expensive, that ambulance rides and tests and overnight care add up fast. Pet emergencies were no different. She'd heard neighbors talk about the cost like it was a shameful secret. Emergency vet bills, financing, monthly payments. The kind of situation where people start searching phrases like affordable emergency vet and pet insurance coverage at 2 a.m. Lauren didn't have a neat solution. She only had a living creature in her hands. "We'll figure it out," Derek said, like he could hear her thoughts. They stepped out into the night. Cold air hit Lauren's lungs, sharp as peppermint. The sky was ink black, and the stars looked brittle, like they could crack. Her porch light spilled a small circle of yellow onto the steps. Beyond that, the yard disappeared into shadow. The pickup was still there at the end of the driveway, a darker shape inside the darkness. For a moment, nothing moved. Then two dim red points blinked, brake lights, brief and watchful, like eyes closing and opening. Lauren climbed into her car, hands shaking as she turned the key. The engine started with a rumble that felt too loud. Derek slid into the passenger seat with the shoebox on his lap, one arm braced around it to keep it steady. Lauren backed out fast, then straightened and headed down the lane. In the rearview mirror, the pickup's headlights finally snapped on, white and sudden, flooding the driveway like a harsh interrogation light. It pulled out behind her. There it was, the thing she'd been trying not to name. They were following. Lauren's grip tightened on the steering wheel. The wheel felt cold and slightly textured beneath her palms. Her mouth went dry. The kitten made a faint, breathy sound from the box, and Lauren's chest clenched. She could hear the soft rustle of towels, Derek's quiet breathing, the whisper of tires on pavement. "Stay on the main road," Derek said. "Don't go home. Don't stop." Lauren's phone map glowed blue on the dash, casting a ghostly light over her hands. The emergency clinic was 22 minutes away. It might as well have been 100. The pickup kept a steady distance, not too close, not too far. Just close enough to say, "We're here. We know." Lauren swallowed hard, eyes stinging. She thought of all the times she'd told someone to keep breathing, to hold on until help arrived. Now she whispered it to herself, to the tiny life in the box, to the night ahead. "Just a little longer," she said, voice shaking. "Please, just a little longer." The emergency clinic sat off the highway like a bright island in a sea of dark fields. Its sign glowed a hard, clean white, and the parking lot lights bleached the world into flat shapes: cars, curbs, tired shrubs rimmed with frost. Lauren pulled in too fast, gravel spitting under her tires. And for a split second she couldn't feel her hands. Behind her, the pickup rolled past the entrance instead of turning in. It didn't stop. It didn't park. It simply drifted by, slow as a thought, and kept going down the road like it had never been there at all. Lauren stared after it, her heart still pounding, the taste of metal still sharp in her mouth. Derek's hand hovered over the shoebox. "Don't look for meaning," he murmured. "Just get him inside." Inside the clinic, the air was warm and dry, smelling of disinfectant and wet fur and that faint rubbery scent of medical tubing. A TV in the corner played a morning news loop on low volume, but the sound felt far away, muffled by the urgent quiet of the place. The waiting room chairs were plastic, the kind that squeak when you shift. The overhead lights were harsh and unforgiving, turning everyone's skin a tired shade of gray. A young receptionist with reading glasses pushed up on her head took one look at Lauren's arms and stood. "Wildlife?" she asked. "Bobcat," Lauren said, and her voice cracked on the word. "Albino. He's barely breathing." They were through the door before Lauren even finished explaining. A tech in navy scrubs hurried them into a back room. The kitten was transferred onto a metal table, lined with a towel. Under those bright lights, he looked even smaller, like a handful of winter. His fur was not the warm cream of a house cat, but an eerie, pale white that made the red ring around his neck look angrier, more wrong. His ears twitched once, weakly, and then went still. The veterinarian arrived with a tired face and kind eyes, her hair pulled back tight. She listened to the kitten's chest, her stethoscope cold and shining. "Severe dehydration," she said quickly. "Hypothermia. Likely respiratory infection." She glanced at Lauren. How long has he been out there? Lauren swallowed. The note said 24 hours. The vet's mouth tightened. That's a long time for one this small. She turned to the tech. Warm fluids, oxygen, get a glucose check. The room filled with soft clinical sounds, the snap of gloves, the beep of a monitor, the gentle hiss of oxygen. Lauren stood back, her hands empty now, suddenly aching for the weight they'd been holding. She watched the tiny chest rise and fall under the towel and tried not to count the seconds between breaths. Another woman stepped in, older than the tech, steadier, with a badge that read AVA. Her eyes went straight to the kitten's neck, then to the corners of his eyes, the pale lashes. "Albino," she murmured. "Poor little thing." Her voice lowered as she leaned toward Lauren. "I've seen cases like this. Exotic pet people, backyard collectors." She didn't say it dramatically. She said it like someone stating the weather. Derek shifted beside Lauren, his jaw set. Ava reached into her pocket and pulled out a penlight, shielding the beam with her hand as she checked the kitten's pupils. "Sensitive to light," she said, "if he was kept in a shed or basement." She didn't finish the sentence, but Lauren could picture it. Dark boards, stale air, a small life pressed into a corner. Lauren's stomach turned. The words from the back of the note flashed again. He came from a place he never should have been. The vet spoke over her shoulder. "We're doing everything we can, but I need you to be prepared." She hesitated, then said it plainly. "He may not make it through the night." That sentence landed like a weight. Lauren felt her eyes burn. She pressed her fingertips together hard, trying to steady the trembling. She'd sat with families in hospital rooms and said softer versions of the same truth. Now it was her turn to hear it, and it was just as brutal. At the front desk, paperwork appeared. Consent forms, estimates, numbers that made Lauren's throat tighten again. Emergency care wasn't just fear, it was cost too, the kind that sends people searching payment plans and low-interest options and wondering if pet insurance would have mattered if they'd had it sooner. Lauren signed anyway, her pen scratching loudly on the clipboard. The sound felt final. When she handed the papers back, Lauren noticed someone in the waiting room. A man in a dark jacket, baseball cap low, sitting too still. He wasn't on his phone. He wasn't reading. His eyes tracked her movements the way a hawk tracks a field. Lauren's skin went cold. Again. She leaned toward Derek. "That's him," she whispered, barely moving her lips. "The one from the gas station." Derek didn't look right away. He only stepped closer to Lauren, his shoulder a quiet shield. "Keep your face calm," he said. "Don't give him anything." Ava reappeared, and when she saw Lauren's expression, she followed the line of Lauren's gaze. Her eyes sharpened. She didn't confront the man. She simply walked to the counter and murmured something to the receptionist, who nodded and picked up the phone. The man in the cap stood abruptly, as if he'd decided he'd stayed too long. He pushed the door open and left. Lauren watched through the glass as he crossed the bright parking lot, his shadow stretching long and thin under the lights. A dark pickup was parked farther down the row, not right by the entrance, not close enough to be noticed at first glance. The man got in and drove off without turning his head. Lauren's knees felt weak. She gripped the edge of the counter until the cool laminate steadied her. Behind the clinic doors, the tiny albino bobcat lay under warmth and oxygen, fighting an invisible battle. Out in the night, something else was moving too, quiet, watchful, and not ready to let go. Lauren didn't really sleep. She lay on her couch with her shoes still on, the lamp in the corner left burning low, because darkness felt like surrender. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that pale little face under the clinic lights, and she heard the vet's words again. He may not make it through the night, like a cold draft sliding under a door. Just before dawn, her phone rang. The sound was sharp in the quiet house, a slice of noise that made her sit up fast, heart already running. It was Ava from the clinic. "He's still with us," Ava said, and Lauren felt her breath loosen, just a little. "Not stable, but he didn't crash again. We've got him warm on oxygen, and he finally took a bit of glucose." Lauren pressed the heel of her hand to her forehead, eyes stinging. Relief wasn't warm, not yet. It was thin and shaky, like a blanket with holes. "Thank you," she whispered. Ava's tone changed, professional, careful. "Listen, the Wildlife Center can take him today. Hudson Valley Wildlife Rescue. They have the right setup. And about that guy in the waiting room, we logged his description, just in case." Lauren glanced toward the window. The sky outside was the color of wet steel, and the trees were black lines against it. "I saw him leave," she said. "He had a pickup." "Yeah," Ava replied. "That's what worries me." By mid-morning, Lauren met Derek in her driveway. The air smelled like cold pine and last night's frost melting into mud. Derek's coffee breath steamed as he spoke. "Before you go anywhere," he said, "we need to go back to where you found that tote." Lauren hesitated. The woods still felt like a mouth that could close, but she nodded. They drove out to the dirt lane. Daylight made everything look harmless, but the edge of the woods kept its own darkness. The leaves were the same wet brown, the same slick black mud. Lauren found the spot easily. Her tire tracks were still faintly pressed into the shoulder. Derek walked the line where road met trees, eyes scanning like a man reading a story written in broken twigs. He crouched near a patch of disturbed leaves and pointed. "Fresh," he said. "Someone stood here, longer than it takes to dump trash." He picked up something half-buried, paper, torn at an angle. It was the corner of a printed map, damp and speckled with dirt. Only a few letters were visible, but they were enough. Hollow, R.D. Lauren's skin prickled. The words on the back of the note, "He came from a place he never should have been," suddenly felt less like a warning and more like directions. They stopped at the same gas station where Lauren had bought the hand warmers. Inside, the smell of burnt coffee hit her again, familiar and sour. The cashier recognized her instantly, his brows knitting. "How's that little thing?" he asked softly. "Still alive," Lauren said. Her voice caught, but barely. The cashier's eyes softened, then sharpened when Derek asked, "You got cameras out front?" The man nodded. "Sure do. Why?" Lauren explained, just enough. A tote at the woods, a note, a pickup, a man watching. The cashier's face tightened with something like concern and disgust all at once. He hesitated, then waved them toward a small office near the back. The door creaked when he opened it, and the room smelled faintly of printer ink and old cardboard. On the monitor, grainy footage played in muted colors. The time-stamp glowed in the corner. The image showed the lot late at night, empty, slick with moisture. Then a dark pickup rolled in and parked near the side, away from the bright canopy lights. A figure in a hood got out, carrying a plastic tote with both hands like it was heavier than it should have been. Lauren held her breath. The figure walked off-screen toward the direction of the woods road. But before they disappeared, they paused. Even through the blur, Lauren could see it. The way the person stood still for several seconds, shoulders slumped, head bowed, as if they were forcing themselves to turn away. It didn't look like swagger. It looked like loss. Derek leaned closer, squinting. "Not a kid," he murmured. "Adult. And they're alone." The cashier rewound and zoomed in. The figure's face never showed clearly. But something else did. A sticker on the pickup's back window, faded but readable in the right frame. A local contracting logo. Not a big company. The kind you see on a truck parked at a hardware store. Lauren's mind flashed to bills, to paperwork, to the way emergencies pull money out of you like wind pulls heat through old window frames. Somewhere out there was a person who'd made a terrible choice, and maybe they'd been cornered into it. She didn't know yet if she felt anger or pity. Maybe both. Her phone buzzed while the video still played. A number with no name. Lauren's stomach dropped. She didn't answer. It rang out, leaving a voicemail without words. Just silence, then a faint exhale, then the click of a hang-up. A chill crawled up Lauren's spine, colder than the winter air outside. Derek saw her face and nodded once, grim. "They know you're moving," he said. Lauren stared at the paused frame on the monitor, the hooded figure, the tote in their arms, the woods waiting beyond the gas station lights. The story wasn't just about saving a kitten anymore. It was about what comes after you choose to do the right thing when someone else wants that right thing hidden. And at noon, she still had to drive the kitten to Hudson Valley Wildlife Rescue. Hudson Valley Wildlife Rescue sat behind a stand of pines, tucked far behind, enough from the road that the world felt quieter the moment you turned in. The gravel driveway curved past a gate and a weathered sign, and the air smelled of cedar and clean snowmelt. Lauren noticed the silence first. Not empty silence, working silence. The soft whir of a heater unit, the distant clink of a chain on an enclosure, the muted call of a bird somewhere deeper on the property. Marissa Grant met them at the intake door. She was in her 50s, steady-eyed, hair pulled back, the kind of woman whose calm didn't come from comfort, but from experience. "You're Lauren," she said, as if she already knew the whole story. Her gaze dropped to the carrier and softened just a fraction. "And this is our little ghost." The clinic had moved the kitten that morning, still on oxygen, still warmed, still hanging on by threads, but alive. Lauren had ridden behind the transport van in her own car, staring at the taillights like they were a lifeline. Inside the rescue, the lighting was gentler than the emergency clinic's harsh glare. Everything looked warm-toned, soft amber lamps, pale wood, clean towels folded in neat stacks. The smell was different too, less chemical, more like warm blankets and animal fur, and the faint tang of disinfectant that didn't burn your nose. Marissa guided them into a treatment room and kept her voice low. "Albino bobcats are vulnerable," she said. "Not just medically. People seek them out." She looked Lauren straight in the eye. "From this point on, no photos posted with location tags, no check-ins, no casual updates online. If someone's sniffing around, we shut every door we can." Lauren nodded, but her stomach still felt tight. She thought of the silent voicemail, the unknown caller's breath in her ear. She thought of the pickup. Marissa's staff moved fast and quiet. A tech adjusted the oxygen line. Another checked a tiny IV taped to a foreleg. The kitten lay in a padded incubator, his fur almost glowing under the soft light, like moonlight caught in cotton. His eyes were half-lidded, pale and glassy, and every breath still carried that faint rasp. "What are his chances?" Lauren asked. Her voice sounded older than it had a week ago. Marissa didn't sugarcoat. "It's a long climb," she said. "Dehydration, hypothermia, respiratory infection, those are bad enough. But he's also stressed, and stress kills wildlife babies faster than people realize." She paused. "Still, he's fighting. And you bought him time." Bought him time. The words hit Lauren in the chest because they echoed the note. 24 hours is all I could buy him." She wanted to hate the person who'd written it. She also couldn't stop picturing that hooded figure pausing in the camera footage, shoulders heavy. They named him Aspen, partly because of his color, partly because aspens are tough in cold places. They tremble, but they don't give up. Late that night, Lauren sat in the rescue's small waiting area while Marissa ran another check. The chair felt stiff under her, and the room held the quiet buzz of fluorescent lights softened by distance. Derek had gone home, promising to keep an eye out. Lauren stared at her hands, at the small ridges of dry skin by her knuckles, and realized she'd been clenching her fists all day. A sudden alarm tone broke the quiet, sharp, urgent, followed by quick footsteps. Marissa's voice came from the treatment room, clipped but controlled. "He's dropping." Lauren stood so fast her knees protested. Her heart slammed in her chest. Through the doorway window she saw movement, hands, towels, the flicker of a monitor. The oxygen hiss sounded louder now, like wind through a crack in a door. Marissa stepped out and held up a hand to stop Lauren from rushing in. Her face was serious but not panicked. "He's not breathing deep enough," she said. "He's fading. We're stimulating, warming, doing everything we can." Lauren felt her throat close. "Let me see him," she managed. Marissa hesitated, then nodded and led her into the room. The incubator was warm to the touch. The glass was slightly fogged, and the air inside looked humid, soft. Aspen lay curled on a towel, so small, so painfully still. His chest moved, but barely. His paws twitched once, then went slack. Marissa leaned close to Lauren's ear. "Wild babies recognize voices," she said, quiet as a prayer, "especially the voice that kept them alive the first night. Talk to him. Don't shout. Just be there." Lauren's eyes burned. She bent toward the incubator, feeling the warmth on her face, smelling the clean cotton and the faint medicinal tang. Her voice came out rough, trembling, more honest than anything she'd said in years. "Hey, little ghost," she whispered. "It's me. You're not alone. Stay with me. Just one more breath." For a heartbeat, nothing happened. The room held its breath with her. The monitor beeped, thin and impatient. Then Aspen's tiny paw moved. Not a big movement, just a small curl of toes, a faint tightening like a hand closing around a thread. His chest lifted a little deeper, one breath, then another. The rasp softened for a moment, like air finally found a path. Lauren let out a shaky sob she didn't even know she'd been holding back. Her knees felt weak. Marissa's hand settled briefly on her shoulder, firm and grounding. "That's it," Marissa murmured. "That's him choosing." A tech adjusted the oxygen flow and nodded. "He's responding." Lauren's whole body buzzed with relief, but it was fragile relief, the kind you hold carefully, like a warm mug you don't want to spill. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She didn't want to look. She looked anyway, a text from an unknown number. No greeting, no name. "Stop. You're making this worse." Lauren's stomach turned to ice. The warmth of the incubator suddenly felt like the only safe thing in the world, and even that felt threatened. Marissa saw Lauren's face and held out her hand. Lauren showed her the message. Marissa's eyes narrowed, and her voice hardened in a way Lauren hadn't heard yet. "We're moving him," she said. "High security enclosure, no public access. And tomorrow we make some calls." Lauren looked back at Aspen. His breathing was still thin, but it was there. He was still here. Outside, somewhere beyond the pines and the gate, someone was watching a different kind of countdown now. Winter didn't loosen its grip overnight, but Aspen did. Days turned into weeks in that quiet place behind the pines. The rescue kept the lights soft for him, the way you'd keep a room dim for someone with a migraine. No sudden glare, no harsh brightness that made his pale eyes squint and water. In the mornings, frost clung to the chain link like sugar on glass. The air smelled of cedar shavings and clean hay. And when the heaters kicked on, you, could hear a low, steady hum that reminded Lauren of a heartbeat you could finally trust. Aspen's changes were small at first, almost insulting in how slow they came. 1 ounce gained, 1 deeper breath without the rasp, a cough that didn't end in panic. Then one morning, Marissa called Lauren in and pointed to the scale reading with a quiet smile. "He's turning the corner," she said. "He's not just surviving now. He's growing." In the high-security enclosure, Aspen's personality arrived like a spark. He started to hiss when anyone moved too close. He batted at towels with a feisty little rage that made Lauren laugh and cry at the same time. His white fur thickened into a plush coat, no longer damp and flat, and his ears stood taller, those tiny tufts like soft paintbrushes catching the light. When he walked, it wasn't a wobble anymore. It was a bobcat's careful, proud prowl. Lauren kept her distance the way Marissa asked. It was a strange kind of love, the kind that tells you to step back. She didn't touch him anymore. She didn't baby talk. She only stood in the observation hall behind a one-way panel, watching his silhouette move through shadows and straw. But the phone didn't stop. Another silent call. Another unknown number. A text that said only, "You don't understand." Then, late one afternoon, Marissa asked Lauren to sit in her office. The blinds were half closed, throwing striped shadows across a stack of folders. The room smelled faintly of paper and black coffee. "We've been working with a wildlife officer," Marissa said, "and we traced the contracting sticker from that gas station camera. The truck is tied to a small crew that does shed work and repairs, and one employee who's been flagged before." Lauren's stomach tightened. "So it was the guy in the cap?" Marissa shook her head. "He's connected, yes, but here's the twist." She slid a printed report across the desk. The person who left. Aspen wasn't part of the crew. It was someone close to them, an adult who got pulled into a bad situation. Marissa explained it gently, but the words still stung. A lonely adult had tried to buy a rare animal through someone who promised it was legal, harmless, temporary. When the reality hit, how fast Aspen declined, how sick he was, how dangerous it was, the buyer tried to back out. The crew didn't like that. Threats started, money demanded, and in panic, the buyer did the only thing they could think of that still had a sliver of decency. They drove Aspen to the edge of the woods, left him where someone kind might find him, and wrote the truth in the only way they dared. 24 hours is all I could buy him. Lauren sat back, the air leaving her lungs. She'd hated that sentence. Now she felt the ache behind it, a cowardly kindness twisted by fear. "And the messages?" Lauren asked, voice low. "Pressure," Marissa said. "A way to scare you into silence. But it's over. The officer has enough to act." She paused, then added, "You were right not to post details. That probably kept Aspen alive." Lauren nodded slowly. She'd spent nights scrolling advice for emergencies the way anyone does. How to protect yourself, how to document threats, how to secure your home, the kind of practical steps people take when they're scared. She'd even caught herself reading about identity theft protection and home security systems, the kinds of high-stakes worries that creep in when strangers start watching. None of it had felt like her life until now. The resolution didn't come with sirens. It came with quiet paperwork, quiet phone calls, and the relief of knowing the rescue was no longer alone in this. Then came the harder truth. "He can't be a mascot," Marissa told Lauren a few weeks later as Aspen moved into a larger, outdoor habitat. The enclosure was filled with logs and brush piles and places to hide, and the air out there had the crisp bite of real winter. If he's going to make it, he has to become more wild, not more tame. Lauren pressed her palms against the chain link, feeling the cold metal through her gloves. The sun was low, turning the snow at the base of the fence into a soft pink shimmer. Aspen moved at the far end, nearly invisible until his white coat flashed between shadows. "So I don't get to say goodbye," Lauren whispered. "You do," Marissa said. "You just don't get to keep him." On the day Aspen was cleared for the final stage, pre-release conditioning, Marissa led Lauren to a quiet corridor that looked out over the habitat. The glass was thick, and the room smelled faintly of pine cleaner. Lauren stood there, heart thudding, and watched Aspen stalk along a fallen log with a confidence that didn't belong to the kitten in the cracked tote anymore. He stopped, not because he wanted her, not because he was tame. He simply paused, ears lifting as if he'd heard something on the wind that belonged to an earlier life. Lauren leaned closer to the glass and let her voice fall to a whisper, the same whisper that had pulled him back when his breath almost disappeared. "Hey, little ghost," she said, "run free." Aspen's head turned a fraction. His pale eyes caught the light, cool, bright, and unreadable. For one long moment, Lauren felt the strange, satisfying sting of an ending that wasn't about possession. Then Aspen stepped forward, silent as drifting snow, and vanished into the brush. Marissa exhaled beside her. "That," she said softly, "is what success looks like." Lauren's eyes filled, but she didn't wipe them right away. She let the feeling come, gratitude, sorrow, relief, layered like winter blankets. She'd found him abandoned at the edge of the woods, left for 24 hours like a discarded secret. And now, in the only way that truly mattered, she was giving him back to the woods. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Before you scroll away, tell me this. Do you believe a bond like theirs could really exist? If this story touched your heart, drop a 1 in the comments so I know you're still with me. And don't forget to subscribe, because the next story might just remind you that sometimes the wild loves us back in ways we'll never forget.